those of you who don't know me, my name's John Del Vecchio, and my big thing is the Cornering Confidence Program. That's where I put, all my efforts. I boiled down the problems to two real main problems. Okay, so like just categorize them. We know there's tons and tons of different, we could come up with an endless number of problems, but we can reduce all of them to speed, too fast. Okay, no one ever really says it's a problem going too slow through a turn. The second one is the surface conditions, okay, or poor traction. I tried to fit everything there. That's just an idea of some of the examples: gravel, bumps, holes, slippery surfaces, objects. Okay, so there's a problem with traction. So here are the solutions, in a nutshell. The bottom line is we want to have speed and steering control to maintain our stability in the corner. Now, when I say stability, I just mean less likely to fall over. Okay, so the more stable we are, the less likely we are to fall over. And so if speed too fast is the problem, we need to control our speed better. And so there's a lot of experience in this Zoom room here. And we know how to enter corners, right? We're going to go in slower than we exit, okay? But it's a lot more complex than that, all right? Just slowing and then going throughout the corner, you can do it pretty sloppy and still get through the corner. And when we need the precision, we lack it. Perhaps we make a mistake and then we run into trouble because our sloppy processes really aren't working. So we need to control our speed better. The second, and then when it comes to surface conditions or poor traction, we need to avoid or confront the hazard. So if we have a poor traction situation or something in our way, we have to either go around it, okay, avoid that altogether, or figure out what's going to happen if we make contact with this thing. Now, the first thing that I talk about really when it comes to the whole, I guess, mindset behind this is, we're all taught in the basic rider course, in our waiver courses, if you will, you have to kind of play the what if game. I'm coming up to an intersection. What if that car goes? What if this and that? And when we get into the twisties, we sometimes have we don't think about it as much if we're in this environment. But I like to take it to the next level. It's kind of like, where is, it's sort of like we know that the problem is out there. All right. So we have to rehearse and practice for this inevitable thing to happen. You can't just perform in an emergency situation unless you've had that situation. When it comes to like CPR, I mean, I've been CPR trained, over the years, I've been retrained and so forth, but, knock on wood, God willing, I'll never have to use those skills. Right. But the reason why I want to probably go back and do it every 2 years or whatnot is because I haven't really used those skills. And so you lose them. So we need to have a mental expectation of where the problems are. And then we have to have the muscle memory to react. As we get into how to control your speed better. So one of the things that, I wanted to talk about is slowing it down. Sometimes the answer is to slow down. You know what I mean? It's not, maybe your friends are going faster. Maybe, you're just not feeling it. Maybe you don't want to ride that close to the edge, but the faster you're going, the more problems that you can have. And I've experienced this. And control your speed better. If you find you're going too fast in a turn, that's a problem. Well, maybe you should enter the turn a little slower. Okay. So that's just, I don't want to be the nanny here, but I'm just saying that is something that people could think about if they're having a lot of pucker moments with speed. But a core concept that we need to kind of think about here is this is the root of all speed problems, is that the faster the speed, the slighter the arc must be. Now I use the word slighter for wider. I tried to, there's various reasons why I chose certain words, but the faster your speed, the slighter or wider the arc must be. The slower the speed, the sharper the arc can be, and your speed equals radius, right? So the image that I put up here is you can kind of get an idea of what that means. So these particular two arcs, you got one is a 25-mile-an-hour turn, the other one's a 55-mile-an-hour turn. And so we can kind of see the differences between the two. And going back to that core concept part right there, it's that we can, if we take the, we can take the 55-mile-per-hour turn at 25 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, right? But we can't, it doesn't work in reverse. We can't take the 25-mile-an-hour turn at 55. Okay, this is this is the general fundamental concept. Yes, we know if you have grippier tires, you lean more, you're on a motorcycle with a shorter wheelbase. Okay, we start to throw in those factors. Yeah, maybe the 25-mile-an-hour turn here, you could take it 55 miles an hour. But we're just talking about a baseline understanding of what the speed is going to do to your cornering arc. Or, turn into your driveway at like 60 miles an hour, see what happens. Okay, that's going to prove the point that the faster we're going, the arc must be wider, slighter, okay, or a longer radius. So how are we going to control our speed better? All right. The first thing is the concept to never corner with your right hand in a fist. The technique that you really need to work on, in my opinion, is roll it up, okay, which we roll off the throttle, close the throttle, and then at our braking. And then the roll it down technique, which is the opposite. We're going to release the brake nice and easy as we roll on the throttle. And we can make these brake throttle transitions at any point. So this particular technique is going to give you more precise speed control. The last part about the controlling our speed better, we have at least 3 options to handle the we're going too fast in a corner. Okay, we have 3 options. A lot of people will say, if you're going too fast in a turn, you press more, lean more, and that's how you make it. Okay, and that is true. Okay, that is a viable option, but generally speaking, that's not the best option. The more we lean the motorcycle, the more likely we are to lose stability, okay, which means we could fall over easier. The other 2, these are the kind of the 2 that people really don't talk about beyond the first one there, because they say, well, if you're going too fast, hey, I learned in my basic rider course, you press more, you lean more, you look through the turn, which is still true, okay, and that will work. And people think that's the end of the story. But that's not the end of the story. We can do some other things. So in this particular, the middle picture, you can take a look at their A and B at the bottom. So there are 2 other options, and they are better options, I think, which we can change our line or slow the motorcycle. So if you take a look at A, okay, A will get you out of trouble as well. Okay, if you're going too fast in a turn, straightening your line or widening your arc, making a slighter curve, speed equals radius. Okay, we have to now match our arc to the speed we're going. That's A. Okay, so we can do that. Now, obviously, if a car is coming the other direction, that could be real trouble. Okay, but we do know our friends, maybe even us, have done this, and there wasn't a car, and it potentially could have saved us from crashing. So I'm not saying it's always going to be, a positive outcome if you cross the lane. And I would obviously say that that's, I'm not encouraging people do this as a practice. What I'm saying is, if you do, just stating a fact, you have that as another option to pressing more. Okay. The other thing is is B. We can slow. Okay, because go back to the speed equals radius. If I'm going slower, I can make a sharper turn. And so there's several options for slowing in the corner. We can roll off the throttle or we can apply brake. All right. And I do say that with a word of caution. Okay, there's special ways to do this that you should become familiar with. And then the other one is in curve speed adjustments. We can make multiple, transitions from brake to throttle in the corner, in the curve, to control our speed. Okay, so sometimes we have to add throttle, sometimes we have to remove throttle, sometimes we have to add brakes. So what do you do if there's a something that you're going to run into, a big pothole? When it comes to avoiding, we'll talk about avoiding or confronting. There's going to be a point where we're going to have to decide, are we going to upset everything we've planned for here to ride through this thing, or are we going to go around it? So there's a point where, like I think I marked it with a circle. There's a decision point where we're going to either commit to one action or the next, right? And so what I try to teach people, is our ways to do swerves while leaning. Basically it's a very similar maneuver. When you're in a turn, obviously you don't want to, just like a normal swerve, we don't want to go over, very, very abruptly, because we don't want traction to be lost. We have traction going towards turning. So if we kind of move our handlebars too quickly, we could add for too much more turning traction. Whereas when you kind of learn in the basic rider course, you're going upright. So there is no real turning traction until the moment you're making the swerve. And so when we're in a turn, we can still make that line change. And there's a couple different ways you can do this, but really just, keeping everything the way you normally would. I think in the, the basic course, they say just let the motorcycle move underneath you, and kind of don't do anything, don't move your body that much, except like obviously your arms to do the swerve. But it's kind of very similar in a corner. When we're leaned over, we simply just don't move anything else. We can kind of just move our arms and steer to change direction there and back. But so that's one of the techniques we can use. Now, a lot of riders don't practice this maneuver. Okay. And so if you don't practice just light swerves in mild curves to get the muscle memory built, when you're called upon to do the swerve in a situation, or I don't really call it a swerve, I just call it a line change, you're going to be in a better position because you don't have to think of how to do it. And you don't think about this. You get to the decision point where the pink dot is. If it has to be kind of automatic, so you can't, if you short circuit at that point, where a lot of people do, they see the gravel and they're not ready for it, they could have trouble. Whereas if they prepare with building muscle memory to change that line, it'll be behind you before you know it. And you'll be, warning your buddies in the Senna, hey, there's gravel in the corner, instead of maybe getting in trouble or freaking out in your helmet that you had a close call. So this could be gravel, this could be the deer carcass, of pothole and that kind of thing. And so we can avoid things in the turn. So if your mentality is this, I don't make line changes. Line change people are not good riders. You have to be a good rider. You have to have a smooth, perfect arc every corner. Well, if that's your mentality and you don't practice swerves and line changes, you're going to be more susceptible to malfunctioning in your brain when you have to go do these things. Your motor skill function to your hands from your brain. And so what I suggest people do is to practice what I call oscillations, or basically just light swerves you can do it in a parking lot. You can do it when there's no risk whatsoever. And then if there's an issue, you can maybe avoid that. Okay. The other option is the do nothing option. Okay. So this is the identification of something that's a problem, and just saying, I see it. This is not going to be as pleasant as I wanted this turn to be, but I'm going to hold the fort and just do what I hold this line, whatever it is. This is another thing you should rehearse. What I tell people with this one here is, get out when you're doing a ride, and just, if there's a shadow from a tree, or there's something, a different color of the road where they've kind of filled in a pothole or something, try to pretend those are things that could be poor traction or traction problems, and practice riding through those is a rehearsal. Because like I said earlier, we have to rehearse these things. We have to prepare for these things. It's any skilled person at any activity practices certain things, certain skills that they're going to need at some point. So if we're not working on the skills here to avoid, or to confront and go over this, we're kind of just an accident waiting to happen if we're not ready to handle these things. But this particular slide here has more to do with confronting the hazard. All right. So the flat principle, I talked about the straight principle. That's a big part of it's a guiding principle, the straight principle. The other guiding principle is the flat principle. What this basically means is we want to keep our suspension in the sweet spot, in the middle of travel, relatively speaking, even though we know that the motorcycle is going to be pitching back and forth. So if we go into a turn, if we go against the flat principle and we brake hard coming in, what's going to happen to that suspension? Okay, we're going to go past the sweet spot and we're going to almost fully compress. If we're braking hard and we're not being mindful of keeping a balanced suspension, okay? Obviously, when we enter, we want to have a slight bias on the front wheel. That, according to what I believe with trail braking and those kind of things. But it's still impossible to keep it 50-50 all the time. If you're about to go into a turn and there's a huge pothole, you want there to be room in your suspension. So again, this discussion is about handling in-curve problems. So we don't know where the big, huge pothole is, but we can perform every corner as much as we can with the flat principle so that it can absorb the compression, okay, of those nasty bumps. The straight principle is another way that we can prepare for the nasty bump. We want to have the motorcycle more vertically upright. All right. So if you take a look at the two Ducati pictures on the right there, we have the rider leaning inside, kissing the mirror, motorcycle vertically straighter. The girl on the right picture, she hasn't kissed the mirror, and so the motorcycle is leaning more. Okay. So think about this. If there's a huge pothole in front of that motorcycle, which positioning of the body in the motorcycle is better equipped to respond to the imperfection in the road? Okay, it's going to be the more vertically upright motorcycle, because the suspension can't work very well when it's at full lean like this. Okay, it will work. Okay, you will get suspension travel. It's just less likely that you will get the best result if you hit a big object or a big pothole. So that's why when I ride through, some of the twisties, I might be kissing the mirror more than some of my friends, or, I might be in a position where I don't need to be looking like the Ducati rider. I'm sorry, the woman on the left, okay, the straighter, I said Ducati earlier, they're both all Ducatis, but I'm saying the more upright rider on the right side picture, I'll do that when I don't even have to, because I'm preparing myself for the pothole, because my suspension is going to react better in that way. Now, do I always ride like that? No. A lot of times the far right picture, where she's in line with the motorcycle, I do that. But when I really want to put the more odds in my favor, I will kiss that mirror, because I know if I hit that thing, I got a better chance of keeping the bike upright, more stable, if I have the positioning like that. One of the things that I will encourage you to do if you're new here, you can join the Cornering Confidence community. It's really easy. I have Instagram. Let me see here. I made it simple. My school is streetskills.net, but I have corneringconfidence.com as the URL that'll bring you there. You can sign up for my newsletter. I send out a monthly newsletter, and I don't just try to, push things in it, like I'm selling things. I try to put important things that I've done. I collect all my ideas and things that have happened to me related to the school over the month. And then I send them out. And occasionally I send out like a second one to certain groups that may have like signed up for my online course or that kind of thing. And so that's pretty much free. You sign up for that. And then YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, if you're into those, you can find me on those. And these Zoom events.